Hi, boys and girls. How are you today? I have a mystery for you today. All right. You have to listen and you tell me what you think it is. Do you know yet? Okay. I'll show you some things that are in it. Okay. Okay. There's one. There's two. There's three. What do you think is in my box? Do you know what this is? This is a puzzle. Have you ever put together a puzzle? Why is there a picture on the front of the puzzle? That's right. When we put all the pieces together, and there's a gazillion pieces in there, when we put all the pieces together, we should have a picture of two snowmen, right? Maybe you do a puzzle of a doggy or a kitty or a toy or something. But puzzles are fun. Well, today we are going to do some puzzles, you and I. Would that be fun? Now, I'll show you the pieces one by one. And when you think you know what the puzzle is, you shout it out. Because these are all things that are going to be in our story today, okay? So here's the first piece I'm going to put on, okay? Let's put it right there. Do you know yet, do you think? Some of you think you know. Okay, I'll show you the second piece. What do you think? Okay, let's see. Where does this piece go? I think it goes right there. Do you know what it is yet? Do you want another piece? Don't tell anybody if you know. Don't tell your brothers or sisters. Okay, let's put that piece on. Oh, Miss Kathy thinks it's starting to look like something now. You want another piece? There are more pieces left. Okay, let's put that piece on. Oh, there's nothing there. What do you think? Last piece. Oh, do you know now? What's our mystery picture? What is that? A barn! Good job. We built a barn. You did a good job. How long did it take you to figure out what it was? Did you know on the first piece or the second piece? Okay, here comes our second puzzle. Remember I said I had three. Okay, I'll show you the picture close up. That's the first part of our puzzle. That's a mystery, don't you think? What do you think that could be? Are you thinking you know? I hear you shouting. What do you think? Oh, that might give it away. That might give it away. What do you think? Do you know yet? Do you think you know yet? What is that? Where do you think that goes? Maybe here? You think here? Oh, are you knowing what it is? We have the most important piece last. Oh, Miss Kathy, we knew it was a horse. We knew it was a horse when we saw his leg. So we're going to have a barn and we're going to have a horse in our story, okay? I love horses. That'll be fun. Okay, one more thing in our story. Oh, it's blue. It's how do you do on blue? Okay. What do you think? That's a mystery. Oh. Let's see, that should go. What do you think? No. Maybe over here somewhere, huh? You think? Maybe over here? No. Maybe right here. Now be careful. Be careful. You might think it's a car, but be careful because it isn't a car. It's a... What is it? It's a blue truck. A blue pickup truck. Okay, so what's going to be in our story? A barn, a horse, and a blue pickup truck. So you be watching for those. Oh, I see the barn already. I see the barn. This story is about a little boy whose name is Matt. Matt. And Matt lived on a farm. A farm, that's where you would find a barn, on a farm. Well, he liked living on a farm, but there was one problem with Matt. Matt was afraid. Now you might ask, well, what was Matt afraid of? Matt was afraid of everything. He was afraid of the animals on the farm. He didn't like the animals. He was scared of the cows and the horses. He didn't like feeding the chicks. I mean, he was afraid of all the animals. He was afraid when it got dark. So he was kind of like Johnny in our other story. He was afraid of the dark. He was afraid of loud noises like firecrackers. Do you ever on the 4th of July get a little scared because all the fireworks are going off? Well, he was afraid of that. He was afraid to play sports like baseball or anything like that because he was afraid he'd get hurt. Afraid. Oh, I can understand. He was afraid of bugs. And the kids at school, they would tease him. They would come up and say, oh, there's a bug on your back. There's a bug on your back. Or they would make loud noises behind him to scare him. And of course, he was afraid of monsters. So he just about was afraid of everything. And it was so bad that at school, his friends would call him Scaredy Cat Matt. Oh, here comes Scaredy Cat Matt. Scaredy Cat Matt. Now, the problem was Matt came from a home where they taught about Jesus all the time. He had brothers and sisters who had asked Jesus to save them. He had asked Jesus to save him. So he knew the Bible really well, but he still was very, very, very afraid of everything. Well, his dad tried to help him out because they had one horse on the farm, and that horse's name was Bluff. Bluff. And Bluff, remember I said we were going to have a horse. So we've had the barn and we've had the horse. Bluff was the sweetest horse in the whole world. Bluff was very gentle, but Scaredy Cat Matt was terrified to ride Bluff. Now, the only way Dad could get Scaredy Cat Matt to ride Bluff is if Matt would get on and then Daddy would get on right behind him and ride double with him, like put his arms around Matt and hold the reins, and both of them would be on the horse together. Then Matt would ride Bluff, but that was the only way. Now, his mommy and his daddy tried so hard to teach him Bible stories and teach him about men who were brave. Remember, we were talking yesterday about, remember who this is? David, right. About David and how David took care of his sheep. And do you remember what animals came to try to hurt David's sheep. Do you remember? Do you remember? That's right. There was a lion and there was a bear. Now, those are big animals. Those are animals that are very dangerous. But David was very brave, not because he thought he was strong, but because he knew his God was very strong. And Matt's parents, they told Matt all these stories of David. They told him when this huge giant put his fist up and said, "I'm the strongest one. Come on, send somebody. I dare you to try to fight me." And everybody was terrified. Everybody in the army was terrified of Goliath because he really was a very big man, had a very big shield and a very big spear, and they were scared of him. But you know what? David, young little David, was willing to fight Goliath. He was the only man in all of Israel who was willing to fight Goliath. And when Goliath saw David coming, little skippy David, he said, "Oh," and he laughed. He said, "You got to be kidding me. You're sending me this little boy, and I'm such a big man." But you know what David said to Goliath? Listen to this. "Thou comest to me with a sword." Remember, I said he had a big sword, and with a spear, and with a shield. "But I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand." David knew that God was with him. God was standing right beside him, and that God would keep him safe, and God would win the victory over Goliath. That's why so many times David would pray to his God and say, "What time I am afraid." He might have been afraid going against Goliath. I sure would have been. "What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee." And Matt, that's what you have to do. You have to start trusting God to take care of you. And Matt really was trying, but he just was so scared. Well, one evening, all of his brothers and sisters went to their cousin's house to have a big party and spend the night. But of course, Matt wouldn't go because Matt was very afraid. He didn't like to go anywhere but home at night. So he stayed with Mommy and Daddy. And Daddy went out. Ah, there's our blue truck. Daddy went out in his truck to help one of the neighbors. They were having problems with one of their animals. So he left Matt and Matt's mommy at home, and he went out to help the neighbor. Well, he didn't come home, and he didn't get home, and it was getting later and later and later. And Matt and his mommy, they were getting a little bit concerned as to why Matt's daddy was so long. He didn't call or anything. Well, pretty soon they heard someone coming down their long driveway. They looked out the window, and it was Dad's truck. And they waited for him to come in, and it seemed like it took a long time. And when he came in, he was holding his head, and there was some blood on his hand. And Mommy said, "What happened? What happened? What happened?" And Dad was kind of woozy, and he said, "Well, I've been having some trouble with my truck. Like the brakes aren't real good. And I was coming down the driveway, and I was trying to stop, and the brakes wouldn't work. And I hit into the telephone pole, and I bumped my head really badly on the steering wheel." And then he just fell over. And Mommy was so afraid. She said, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he wasn't waking up. And she said, Matt, we have to have some help. We have to have some help." Well, Matt thought, well, I'll go call 911. I always know to call 911. But see, at Matt's farm, they didn't have little phones like this. They had regular telephones. And Dad had hit the telephone wire. So the telephone wire was down, and the telephone was not working. And Matt said, "Mom, I don't know what to do." And Mom said, "You've got to go get help. You've got to go to the neighbors and get help." "Me? By myself?" "You have to go, Matt. Go." And Matt got to the door, and he looked outside, and it was so dark. And remember, I told you, dark was one of the things that Matt was afraid of. I can do this. And he walked over to the barn. He was going to get Bluff. Because if he could get on Bluff, the horse, he could ride to the neighbor's house and get some help. And he went over to the barn and he opened those barn doors. And it was so dark in the barn. And he could hear, hoo, hoo, hoo. He could hear an owl. And he knew there had to be bugs and all kind of stuff in there. And the animals were kind of rustling around. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. And he went over and he got Bluff. And he put the saddle on because he had watched Daddy do it so many times. He put the saddle on and tightened it and put the bridle on Bluff's face, and he knew how to do this, but he had to get on that horse by himself. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. And he put his foot in the stirrup and he went up over and he was on top of Bluff. He was in the saddle. I'm so afraid. My daddy's always with me. And he remembered what his mommy told him about David, that God was right with David. All the time he was fighting Goliath, God was right there. And Matt said, God, you can ride with me. You can ride double with me. We can do this. And Matt grabbed those reins and he started slow at first. And he started down the driveway and he thought, this is great. I can do this with God. I can do this. And he went a little faster and he went a little faster. And he finally got to the neighbor's house and he got help and they got in their car and they came over and they took Daddy to the hospital and took care of Daddy. But you know what the biggest miracle was that night? Matt learned that he could ride double with God, that God would always be with him. If he was afraid of loud noises, he could ask God to help him because God was right beside him. If he was afraid of bugs, he could ask God to help him because God was right there with him. If he was afraid of those animals like Bluff, he could ask God and God would be right with him. And little by little, Scaredy Cat Matt wasn't Scaredy Cat Matt anymore because Matt knew that God was with him. I like that story because sometimes we're all afraid of things, boys and girls. Mommies and daddies, pastors, everybody, doctors, nurses, everybody has something that deep inside they're a little bit afraid of. That's why God tells us, what time I am afraid, what time Miss Kathy's afraid, I can trust in him. Because he isn't afraid. He isn't afraid. He is strong and powerful, and he can take care of Miss Kathy when she's scared. And remember, we found that verse in this book of the Bible. Do you remember what this book of the Bible is? Remember, we don't hear that. Do you remember how to say that? Psalm. There's an L. Psalm. Psalm. Do you remember how to say that number? It's a 5 and a 6 together. 56. That's easy. 3. Psalm 56, 3. Do you remember the sign for afraid? Fingers all come together. And then they pop out. Like something scared you. And you got scared all of a sudden. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Psalm 56, 3. I'll bet Matt sang that to himself when he was riding Bluff. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Psalm 56, 3. Let's pretend we're Matt and we're on Bluff and it's dark and we're going to go get help for our daddy because our daddy got hurt. Here we go. We're scared because it's dark. We hear owls and other animals. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Psalm 56:3. Let's pretend we're David. We've got our sling, and we're going up against this man who has a sword and a spear and a big shield, and he's a big guy, but we're going up against him. Here we go. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. What time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Psalm 56:3. I'll never, never be afraid, for God is watching over me, and night is just like day to him, so I'll never be afraid. Can you try it with me this time? I'll never, never be afraid, 'cause God is watching over me, and night is just like day to him, so I'll never be afraid. This time when we sing it, let's leave out the word afraid, okay, and just sign it. You think we can remember that? I hope Miss Kathy can. You'll probably remember it and I won't remember it. Okay, ready? I'll never, never be, for God is watching over me, and night is just like day to him, so I'll never be. Did you scare yourself? Let's try it one more time. That was fun. I'll never, never be, for God is watching over me, and night is just like day to him, so I'll never be. Good job. Boys and girls, I hope you'll remember that verse. I hope if something happens today or tomorrow that scares you, I hope you'll remember, what time I am afraid, I will trust in thee. Remember, he's right beside you, watching over you, and he can take care of those scaredies that you get sometimes. I love you, boys and girls. We'll see you tomorrow.